appendicitis. A couple of hours later, she was handed me. "Hello, Mum." Fred arrived home from work to be told his wife had been taken to hospital. He arrived at the hospital to be told he had a baby girl. He kept telling them they'd muddled him up with somebody else. "Hello, Dad." Dad cycled off to his parents' house to tell them of my arrival, but the news flew well ahead of him. By the time he reached my Gran's house, she'd already been told by the woman in the fish shop. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Mum had decided to keep me. The doctors had suggested, considering her age and state of shock, she might want to have me adopted. Mum said no, so I stayed with this couple I'd only just met. Despite arriving 17 years after their wedding, I was also premature and weighed just over 4 pounds. Mum had been prescribed Guinness Stout by a doctor when she was 18 for anemia, and she'd never seen any reason to stop drinking 1 or 2 bottles a day. After I was born, the doctors didn't see any reason for her to stop drinking it either. So there we were, Mum and me, both with our bottles, spending our first Christmas together in hospital, visited regularly by Dad. Later we were joined by my Uncle Joe, who for some reason had fallen down a 30-foot hole. So it was a real family Christmas. After we came out of hospital, Dad had to go in for an operation on his ears, presumably because he still couldn't believe them. I'm convinced that both my parents lived the rest of their lives in a state of shock. In fact, they never told me where I came from. They just kept asking me. When my mum went back to her cleaning job at the pub, I used to go along as well for the ride. Propped up in my pushchair, I'd stare at the red plastic bucket next to me and wonder if I was a twin. My constant companion was Andy, a black and white panda stuffed with sawdust. Andy would occasionally take it upon himself to leap out of the pushchair when I was snoozing. He'd have to be brought home by somebody who'd found him lying face down in a gutter and knew where he lived. As a punishment, he'd be rubbed harshly with a flannel and hung on the washing line by his ears. To me, a nursery was not a playground of paddling pools and building bricks, but a vast land of greenhouses, bursting with hot, sweaty leaves and cucumbers. My father, grandfather and ancestors on both sides were agricultural labourers. Old family photos show men in flat caps and corduroy trousers digging the fields, and women in long dresses packing boxes of tomatoes at trestled tables. Dressed in his old threadbare jumper and worn-out trousers held up round the waist with a necktie, Dad worked all hours, every day, including Christmas morning, with Saturday and Sunday afternoons off. Dad finally gave up with the push bike and bought a moped. As a kid, still tucked up in bed, I'd hear him go out the front door about 6:30 each morning. I'd hear the gate scrape on the concrete path, and then the desperate whirring of pedals as he tried to get his moped started. When I was 9, my dad bought a more trusty Honda 50. This bike had 2 seats, so on Sunday afternoons he'd take me out for a ride, which usually ended up at the nursery. I loved wandering around the ramshackle greenhouses, an Amazon jungle of hot, damp, musty leaves. The heat and smell would become so overpowering I'd have to run outside to take a deep breath of cool, fresh air. The place was a menagerie. Chickens would roam freely, ignored by the feral cats running around the packing sheds, always followed by a line of kittens. Before we left, my dad would take me next door to see the pig farm and the boxing goat. Towards Christmas, the cucumbers would be replaced by huge blooms of white, red, gold and bronze chrysanthemums, and Dad would have to go back up the nursery at night to check on the heating. Occasionally I was allowed to go too, and as I watched him lift the lever on the huge metal door, there would be a roar of the furnace. Standing there in the glow of the fire, I used to think he looked like Casey Jones stoking up the train engine. I'd never seen so many other kids to play with at one time as on my first day at school. When my mum came to take me home for lunch, I couldn't be found. The teachers were put on alert, and I was eventually discovered in the canteen tucking into the rice pudding. That decision, made so early in life, subjected me to school dinners for the next 13 years. At school there were some girls who looked trendy by the age of 7 and looked like they were heading towards the right overall shape. I was tall but slightly podgy, with bobbed hair scooped up and clipped into a hair slide. I wore clothes that I would, no doubt, at some point grow into. My overall image was not about to be improved. In the class, the teacher would write everything up on the board, and we'd copy it down into our exercise books. "Please, miss, I can't see the board." And this teacher asked, Well,
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.